Good afternoon, everyone. We'll make a start. I hope that you've had a good week up until now, and that you're all safe and healthy. I think today's update will be fairly prompt. Obviously, there's not a huge amount of additional news that's come out this week, so I'll run through what there is. But then, please, there's only a small number of people, so please do ask questions using the chat function. As ever, my colleague Mike is on hand to ask any questions, but indeed, as we're a small number today, if you just want to unmute yourselves, please feel free to do that as well. So the first thing we're going to look at is obviously the school reopenings that are currently planned for the 1st of June. And I think over the course of the week, what we've seen is a real shift from what was quite a firm policy announcement at the start that certain year groups would be back in school from the 1st of June to more of an ambition. And I think at the heart of that is a realisation or an acceptance that it will be up to schools to make the decision about whether it's safe or not for your students to go back. So as I'm sure you're very aware, reception years 1 and 6 in primary school from the 1st of June, but all primary students back by the summer holidays, and years 10 and 12, all equivalent exam classes to get some face-to-face time with their teachers again from the 1st of June. I think one thing that schools were considering initially when the announcement first came out was the idea of doing a rota system, particularly as we start to introduce more year groups into school, potentially from September. What the DfE have said about that, though, is they do not want schools to operate a rota system. The idea of this is they want students back full-time, including breakfast clubs and after-school extracurricular activities. So it's not a sort of rota system, which I don't think is particularly helpful. PPE apparently will be available and should be used if social distancing isn't managed, and particularly if, for example, you've got very vulnerable students who you need to give personal care to, then they should wear PPE. There will be tests available if anyone develops symptoms, or indeed if anyone in their families develops symptoms, and that will include the teacher and any students they've been in contact with. We know that the government has suggested that the maximum class size should be 15, which we know is a real challenge because essentially that would mean doubling the number of classrooms. The New Statesman did a small piece of analysis on this, and based on a sample of secondary school timetables, it showed that 95% of rooms were used at any one time. And I don't know if that's the case in your own schools, but certainly that is the I know that the case for many of you, that the idea of just literally doubling class sizes classrooms doesn't work. But also that ultimately, it really is up to you as a school, as an academy, as a MAT, what you want to do, whether you reopen 2 years 10 and 12 on the 1st of June, and how you do that. The DfE have also been very clear, it's up to you whether you open next Monday or next week at all for those key workers, children, and vulnerable students. Now, in order to help you make that decision, it's worth noting that the scientific advice that has been given to the DfE and that has been seen by the Secretary of State and by some of the union leaders is going to be published freely tomorrow. So obviously we'll put that on the SSAT listservs, but if you are trying to reach that decision as an SLT with your governors and trustees, then all of that scientific advice will be published tomorrow to help you inform that decision. And the government has said they will make the final decision about whether or not it is safe to open schools next Thursday on the 28th of May. So we'll wait to hear the announcement next Thursday evening. Just also, when we're talking about key workers, if you are opening next week, the government have again just slightly changed the list of who qualifies as a key worker. So it now includes researchers who are researching corona. Pharmacists are included in the list of health and social care staff, which they weren't before. Any staff who work in embassies for other countries, are included in the definition of local and national governance, and also all parliamentarians and parliamentary staff are also included in the list of key workers. One of the things that we know schools are looking at are, if you are planning on reopening from the 1st of June after half term, is a risk assessment. Last Friday on the SEND update, which, if you do have your Senkos in school and they want to be part of, please do email your relationship manager. And on that update, Graham Quinn, who chairs our SEND board, shared his risk assessment for vulnerable students, obviously particularly relevant in special schools where students do require personal care in some instances and so on. But what I'll do after this call is share this on the email forums. But again, this might just be useful to look through as a pro forma for a risk assessment for vulnerable students and students with SEND. So I will share that with the forum. Great. So just sort of moving on to think about why this is such a pressing issue. Well, we know that the longer that schools are not open in the usual way, the greater the disadvantage gap will grow. And there have been various studies that are looking at how big that gap might be. And of course, it's for a number of different reasons. And we also know that the instances of physical abuse and sexual abuse and neglect are all rising during this crisis. So there is a real sort of societal need to get students back to school as soon as it's safe to do so. One of the interesting studies was the Institute of Fiscal Studies, which looked at how much home learning different groups of students are doing. And what they found is that students from better off households are undertaking an average of 30% more time than the poorest fifth of students. In other words, an extra hour and 15 minutes per day. So that's essentially a whole day per week. And of course, schools have now been closed, coming up for 10 weeks. So on the one hand, we know that the most disadvantaged students are the least likely to be have less home learning than their more advantaged peers. However, on the flip side of that, or rather extending that, around 50% of those better off parents said that they would send their child back if schools reopened on the 1st of June. However, only 30% of the most disadvantaged parents said they would. So again, the children who are most at risk of not getting home learning are statistically the ones who are most likely to be kept at home. The DfE have said at this stage they don't think that schools should be fining parents for not sending their children in, and schools will not be responsible for attendance figures when schools partially reopen more on the 1st of June. But again, I think you can see there the real sort of societal need. So yesterday I did a curriculum seminar, and one of the issues we looked at is what the curriculum will look like sort of when schools do start to return, whether that's from June, whether it's later in summer, or whether indeed it's from September. So one thing to consider, and these are sort of 7 questions you might want to work through with your SLT or your governors, is to sort of think, to what extent has your school curriculum been delivered during lockdown? Could you put a percentage on that? So it might vary in different subjects, but if you're looking at your school curriculum for this year, to what extent do you think that has been delivered? When schools reopen, how will you use current formative assessment strategies or new formative assessment strategies to find out what students know and what they don't know? Because essentially that's what formative assessment is all about. So again, sort of, are you thinking about how the plans you have in place for formative assessment when schools reopen fully? Barry Carpenter wrote a blog on the SSAT website, which many of you will have read, about the idea of a recovery curriculum that's got a lot of traction. And this idea that actually when schools reopen, we can't just return to normal straight away. We need to have this time for recovery. We need to understand the different experiences that students will have. There'll be students that have suffered bereavement. There'll be students whose parents might have had COVID, and so on. And there'll be students who really haven't had much social interaction with children of their own age when they return. So what does a recovery curriculum in your school context look like? How will we close the disadvantage gap? And obviously we're waiting to hear from Ofsted when they will start doing inspections, but one of the proposals that they are making and they are consulting on is whether they should change the focus for the first year of inspection to look at the extent to which schools are helping disadvantaged students catch up on the learning they might have missed during lockdown. So that might be, depending on the outcome of the consultation, a slight shift away from the current framework for Ofsted, instead focusing more on disadvantage. How would you manage a period of blended learning? If you've got, if you're asking teachers to come into school and to obviously look after the key worker students, children, and vulnerable students, but also potentially from the 1st of June start face-to-face teaching in reduced class sizes of 15, years 10 and years 12, will you still be expecting them to be setting home learning for other year groups? Let's say from September, if all year groups return as is the ambition of the government, then if, as we know, 50% of parents don't currently feel confident sending their children into school, if that continues to be the case, again, will you simply say, well, that your child is not going to receive learning unless they come into the physical building, or will you provide ongoing support for parents that choose not to send their child in? Of course, we know one of the big issues around this summer and the exams is the fact that although early entries of year 10 and year 9 and younger students for GCSE and year 12s for A-levels will be able to get a grade this summer, they will not count in performance tables in 2021 and beyond. And we know that you're making very, very tough decisions at the moment about whether or not to enter those students or to enter them in the summer of 2021 in the normal exam way. And so, of course, if that's the case, then it might have quite profound implications for your timetables and your options blocks. And of course, one of the big emphasis of Ofsted in the current framework is around cultural capital. And certainly some of the studies that have looked at disadvantage have looked at students who are accessing things like, for example, the National Theatre Live performances, the Royal Opera House performances. So again, I think we'll see a widening gap of student cultural capital. So again, what will you do as part of your recovery curriculum, for want of a better word, to address that? So again, just 7 questions you might want to work through with your team. So a few updates from Ofqual. I posted these on the email forum at the start of the week, but I'll just run through them very quickly. So just a reminder that that standardisation process that will happen after you submit your grade and rank order will happen at a subject level, not at a school level. So it's not about your progress 8 or about your attainment 8 in previous years. It's about the grades you got in that particular subject. And for A level, they will look at your 2019 results, your 2018 results, and your 2017 results. For your GCSE, they will look at your 2019 results and your 2018 results. But it's at a subject level, not at a school level. However, it's not at an individual student level, so they won't be moving students up or down. They'll just be moving either the whole cohort up or down, and that rank order won't change. What Ofqual has said is that the model they are proposing for standardisation means that if you are including private candidates, so that's either returning students or adults linked to the school community or any student who is not on your roll, they have said it will not affect the grades of students on roll. I'm not entirely sure how that works, because of course you have to include them in the rank order, And if they move students up or down, then inevitably including that student in that rank is going to have an impact. So it will be interesting when we get the final standardization formula to look at what they mean by that. But I think that at this point, it should be a reassurance to schools if you are including private candidates and you are confident that you have the evidence you need to make that professional judgment about their grade and their position in the rank, then you should include them, and it shouldn't be at the expense of your own students' results. I think one of the things that schools have asked us a lot is whether or not you should be kind of trying to match your results perfectly to previous years. And what Ofqual has said is, well, no, we do expect year-to-year variance within subjects, and that's entirely normal. That what you've been asked to do as schools is simply to say, in your professional judgment, what is the most accurate grade you think a student would have achieved had they said exams as normal. So yes, use that national data and use your prior attainment as a bit of a sense check, but ultimately, certainly the teacher level, you don't need to be overly worried about, well, this is, we're putting in far more students for level 7 than we did last time. It really, it's about the teacher judgment. That being said, of course, it is important as school leaders and if there are any governors on the call, to remind teachers that, of course, that's absolutely the right approach, but those results might be moved down as a result of standardization, and that is partly based on your previous results as a school. What they have also said is that they expect all schools will see some adjustment to their grades. So, this is not a case that it will only apply to a few outliers. I think, be prepared to see some change to your grades, and certainly don't assume that the exact centre assessed grades that you submit will be the final grades. They also have a reminder about confidentiality, and say, it's really important that teachers don't discuss the CAGs or the rank with parents or students. But it also has a point about saying, discouraging students and parents from asking teachers for this, because it is just a waste of time for senior leadership. And what they say is, if there are too many requests of this nature, it could delay the whole process and results might have to be delayed. So kind of warning there to parents, really not to waste time doing that. A reminder again that your rank you submit won't change. So again, the rank is really very important, because that is the basis on which you'll be moved up or down. So again, really check those students who are on the top and bottom of each rank within each grade. And of course, usually Ofqual have the exam boards have a lot of internal checks for this data. Obviously, once you submit that data, there is no way for them to check it. So check and double check and triple check when you enter that data that it is correct, because of course the exam board won't know that they are going on what you submit. I think this week, all of the exam boards have published guidance on how they want the results to be submitted. It doesn't go into a lot of detail for some of them, and I know there are still questions that people have, but it certainly goes through what the front page and the process will look like. So do have a look at those for your various different exam boards. Just a reminder of last week's update around confidentiality that we did with Wrigley's, the lawyers. I've had a couple of follow-up questions about that, so I thought it'd be worth just quickly reiterating. Again, must keep that CAG and rank order confidential for the time being. However, you could have FOIs, and those FOIs will relate directly to the process that you went through as a school. So an FOI would be around how did you go about making those judgments. Alternatively, you could have a data subject access request where after results day, you will be legally obliged to give students their own centre assessed grade that you submitted, their order in the rank, just as a number, and any other materials that related to those decisions. And that includes emails, it includes recorded conversations. So just a reminder to staff, again, keep reminding them during this process in the next kind of couple of days when they might be finalising their grades, any emails they send, even if it seems like a very flippant email, if there is a DSAR, that will have to go to that student. And it's not as simple as telling staff to delete their emails. Deleted emails as well have got to be passed on as part of that process. And so do also check that your data retention policy is up to date. So in terms of next steps for SSAT, obviously I know most schools are going to be open next week in half term, so we will do another policy update at 4 o'clock next week, and by then we should have the full response from Ofqual on the general qualification. So we'll be looking at that, and we will have the scientific advice about school reopening, so we can explore that in more detail. On the SSAT website, you can find a guide that we've written on leading the CAG and ranking exercises, which I know many of you have already downloaded, but if you haven't, that's available. Two things that will be coming out in this week's Sunday supplement based on requests that we've had from you. One is a pro forma that you can use as schools if you do have any FOIs, and that is really about where we will be describing the process that schools have undertaken this year. Again, just to help you sort of prepare those packs in advance if you anticipate a large number of FOIs. And the other one is, I know a lot of you are deciding to enter year 10s or younger students this year, knowing that their results won't count for you as a school. And the advice that I've been giving to people is, if you are doing that, start the conversation now with key stakeholders like governors and trustees, like parents, and say, look, we're doing this because we think it's right for the young people, but we know as a school that we may see a hit next year. That's particularly, I think, relevant if one of the early entries is in English, whereas of course you'll take the double hit because you won't get the double weighting in attainment rate and progress rate for English. So what we'll do is we'll produce some draft wording that you can send out to parents and governors just to explain why you're making that decision, but to say that you anticipate taking the hit next year. If there are any other documents, pro formas, things like this that would save you time, please let us know, and we can write them over half term and get them out as soon as possible. But really, we know how busy all of you are, so if there are things that we can do to make your lives easier, then please do let us know, because genuinely, both of those pro forma requests came from members. So if you tell us that you want something, we will get that done. Right, I can see there have been a few comments. Mike, are there any questions or comments people have?
We've just had one comment in. Just to let everybody know, I have posted a couple of links in the chat as well. So there's a link to the documents that Tom was referring to that Graham Quinn submitted around risk assessments, and also a link to the exchange where you can download the teacher assessment and ranking guide. And the comment that we've had in, which echoes people's opinions that I've seen on social media, in the news, is how can we get more year groups in without a rota, as we would need more staff, more classrooms? How on earth could that work?
Yeah, I literally don't know. I mean, it's impossible, isn't it? I mean, you can't be operating on a 15 class basis and have all students in all the time, not on a rota system. I think most people on this call are probably secondary based. I apologise for any primary colleagues, but at secondary, I think it's slightly easier because the guidance at the moment about reopening on the 1st of June is just some face-to-face time of years 10 and 12, and that's probably more realistic. I think the idea of getting all primary school children back in before the summer holiday with that reduced class size of 15 is just never going to happen, quite frankly. As I said, it'd be interesting to see the scientific advice tomorrow and to see what the government say in a week's time. But I completely agree with you. How on earth will that happen? Anything else, Mike?
That was the only comment that we've had today.
Great. I mean, I appreciate it. There's not a huge amount of new information there, but hopefully that's still been helpful. If people do have any questions or comments, then I will be around for a bit after this. So please do stay, and you can ask me or discuss anything with me. And again, if anything does occur to you about any support or particular resources you'd like us to produce to save you time, please do let me know. But otherwise, I know you're all very busy. and I hope you're able to enjoy some of the bank holiday at least, and have a bit of a break over half term. But from all of us at SSAT, stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you.